Hi, welcome to IDG. IDG full form is Informal Discussion Group, and this is a carry forward from our college days, from St. Stephen's days. And in this new world, it's moved to the digital platform. So today we have as a guest somebody who we all think, we all money, all the people in this group of alumni in Bombay, uh, we all think we know this person very well. But I am absolutely certain that as the conversation goes, you will be surprised at every step. And let me just give you a glimpse. How many of you know that our guest and his wife have been are Emmy nominated? Emmys are the Oscars of the television world. So they are Emmy nominated. And you think you know Chandradev Bhagat, or Chandru as we call him well, prepare to be surprised. So hi Chandru, and looking forward to the conversation, and please continue to surprise every one of us. You are the sutradhar of this, you were one of the sutradhars of the group when it started. So we all think we know you well, but we'll be surprised.
No, nothing like that. But happy to talk to all of you all and say a few things, maybe pass on a few things that might be of interest to you all. But you want me to
Yeah,
start or you want to?
let me just start at the beginning. So you grew up in Jamshedpur. You said that your grandfather ran away from home to join Tisco, and then your dad was an avid photographer. And then you chose to do boring eco honors in college. So where was the creativity during your childhood? So just take us through your childhood, your emphasis on sports, and all the stuff that you did.
Right. No. So thank you, Sonu. And it's somewhat interesting, awkward, embarrassing to talk to y'all about myself to a whole lot of y'all who I've known for a very long time as well. I mean, and for many, many years now. But, it's still interesting to maybe share a few things that I can possibly include. I guess the starting point potentially is, I grew up in Jamshedpur, so at heart, very much a small town boy. And I guess potentially
What? Correct.
the DNA has been to,
Chandradev. CDB. Chandradev Bhagat.
somebody saying, anyway, I'll continue. So, yeah, I mean, I grew up in Jamshedpur. It's the most amazing sort of childhood one can have, I think, because Tata Steel, I mean, it's a steel city, and Tata Steel, of course, then provides the most interesting infrastructure and schooling, etc., possible for anybody. I have always thought Jamshedpur is one of the best places to grow up in, basically, because there is so much to do. So many, pretty much all our hours was spent outside of home, be it school, be it activities, be it sport, be it art. So,
Yeah.
interestingly, I kind of spent a lot of time playing sport, and that was one of my passions. And I played sort of multiple sport, given that there was a lot of time and I enjoyed it. So there was a time when Tata Football Academy wanted a bunch of us to join the Tata Football Academy as juniors in grade 6, 7. I played badminton fairly actively. I played the junior nationals, under 19 nationals, and was ranked and all of that, and made some very good friends later on. We done a lot of work with them too. I played cricket I was selected for the East Zone um, under 19 team. And there was a classic situation of whether you pursue academics or you pursue sport. And of course, the choice made with a high degree of influence from parents is to, of course, pursue academics. You don't give up your board exams to pursue sport. But that is that. And I think, again, I mean, interestingly, Jamshedpur, again, a bit of a story is that my grandfather is the one who actually went to Jamshedpur. Um, they were, I think, landowners in the area and this and that, but he didn't like it. He moved on and went to in the 30s, joined Tata Steel, which I and later on, my dad, of course, was there, and he chose to pursue art for his career. So I think very interestingly, I think there is a bit of a lineage of um, people wanted to do their own thing
Yeah,
and
so
chase
Chandru,
somewhat the unknown, I would say.
yeah, just when you were talking of Tisco or Tata Steel, as it's called now, there's a very interesting story that in the
Yeah.
20s and 30s, when they needed people to work in the factories, uh, there were no engineers, there were no graduate trainees, so to say. So the officers from Tata Steel, Tisco, used to go to the railway station and wait
Yes.
for the train to pull in, and then they would announce that any able-bodied man who wants to work in Tata Steel should come, and they would recruit people that
Yeah,
way.
just get off the train and join.
Yeah, but did your granddad also kind of get off a train and start working on the in Tata Steel?
No, I know of this story for sure. I know of friends and their parents and grandparents who have actually joined the Tata Steel that way. They were coming on a train and they announced in those loud whatever sort of mediums they had then, saying get off and join if you want a good job and a good life, and we'll provide you, and we'll your kids will be taken care of. Join Tata Steel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's how a lot of them did. I think my grandfather actually came there. Uh, so there was news that this big factory has been set up and there will be jobs, and it's a modern new thing to do. So he wanted to get away from their farming zamindari kind of life, and um, said, I'm going away, I'm going to join this factory and work. And very interestingly, in the 40s, um, he was sent to England by the Tatas, and there was actually later on I was told by my dad and other people in the family that there was a big debate, and people were very upset in the family that he wanted to go, because there was this massive fear that if these guys go, he'll not come back, या फिर मेम लेके आ जाएंगे.
Yeah, yeah,
Because there was this lure of being abroad and sort of fancier life and this and that. But I think no such drama happened, unfortunately. He came back after about 3-4 years
yeah.
after doing his training, and later on, I mean, very interesting. I think he had met Churchill and all that. I think their program was designed by the government, and Winston Churchill came to sort of hand over their certificates or whatever else they had. So he had met Winston Churchill, and later on, he would tell us stories about that too. So yeah, and so moving on, I think
cut
my
to college days and cut to the fact that you wanted to do an MBA. What happened then?
yeah, so cut to college somehow. I with all this sport, I mean, I did economics, and I sort of finished in '94, and yes, I mean, I think I attempted my MBAs in my third year and didn't get. I think I attempted only two places, the IIMs and XLRI, thinking we are these smart boys from economics, we should get through somewhere. Didn't happen. And I was working. There was something I decided to work for a year, and thought I'll take my MBAs etc. as most of us were doing a year later. But in the middle of that, a very sort of interesting, I think watershed moment happened in my life where um, so there was a company called IMG TWI that was coming into India in back in 94, 95. And IMG is one of the world's largest sports marketing company. And through some college friends, I was amazingly sitting in front of a British guy who was asking me to work on Calcutta football for ESPN. They were doing something about ESPN. They said, "Hey, do you know anything about Calcutta football?" And this is where I think destiny plays a part, because I grew up in Jamshedpur, neighborhood of Calcutta. I'm a sports fan. I know Calcutta history of football backwards. So when he asked me, you know anything about it, I told him, who are the captains, who's won the league, who's been runner up, and who plays whom. So in about 5 minutes, he said, okay, you're hired. So I said, fine, that's great. And it was fascinating for me to realize that there's a way to make a living by being part of sport and being part of sort of audiovisual output, which is my other interest area actually, thanks to my father and my other interests in art and photography.
So did
So,
you talk about salary at the interview?
so that was the other interesting bit too. So I'm talking to this pretty much for the first time, I think, a northern English British accent, right? Yorkshire kind of accent. As I can't understand 90% of what he's saying, more or less. So he said, "You're hired." I said, "Great." Then he said, "You'll get this much, whatever it is." So I said, "Yeah, fine." I had no idea how much I'm going to get paid. So, and I said, "Yeah." So he said, "Okay, come from tomorrow." So, and when I went back and met my friend saying, "Oh, naukri mil gaya kya?" I said, "हाँ, mil gayi." So they said, "Okay, how much are you going to get paid?" I said, I have no idea. They said, "What is wrong with you? You should at least find out and all that." I said, "Listen, even if you didn't pay me a single penny, I would still join. So it doesn't matter."
Yeah.
Because it's just pretty much like a dream job, so to say. And I think that sort of sent all the MBAs and every other possible thing I wanted to do in the normal stream of things out of the window. And I kind of believe that I've never worked a day after that, more or less, because I've just done things that are of interest and passion to me. And it was a tremendous sort of learning curve. So I mean, IMG, it's like the best guys in the world were coming and telling us and teaching us things. And we were sort of the early birds of the media industry, so to say, back in 94, 95. And I mean, I remember the first day I went to that a match at Salt Lake Stadium, I think it was, where Mohun Bagan was playing East Bengal. And there was over 1 lakh people sort of in the stadium. And I was this sort of flunky to meant to help around with the various things that are going on in terms of TV production. And it was the most sort of sort of awe-inspiring moment for me, sort of running around in that field and kind of getting things done and seeing that many people sort of around you. And yeah, it was absolutely fascinating. Of course, we've been through all sorts of other cricket matches, sports, events around our lives moving forward, but that was like a day of reckoning for me in that sense.
Yeah, so Chandru, those were early days of sports management, celebrity management, sports management. How did the bigwigs of the sports world, especially the cricketers, take to it? Did they know about it? Were there challenges? Any interesting stories around that time?
I mean, it was probably the turning point of sport and cricket around that time, I think, right? So I think for the first time, cricket was being done in a professional way, in a way that's done around the world. Before that, there was Doordarshan kind of coverage, as you might know, which is pretty boring and unidimensional and actually bad. So so we were sort of, as TWIMG, we were trying to bring in the international norm of doing things, and we were working with the best, like I was saying, in the world. And I think there was the early days of people getting famous in that sense, right? I mean, it was 94, 95. So Tendulkar had sort of whatever had played a few years. I mean, I remember we obviously, because of who we were working for, had great access and to the cricketers because the pedigree of the company and all of that. So I remember having gone to Rahul Dravid's house after he came back, a day after he came back from his debut tour in England in '95, I think, and well, I had breakfast with him. We were doing something for ESPN, and they want us to do something around all these young cricketers who had come and made a mark. So yeah, and I remember him being, his place in Bangalore and being his mother, I think, was a painter, and um, we spoke to him in his house and had breakfast and all of that. But him being very sort of sort of modest and articulate, and like he's right through being, more or less. It was great to actually catch up and connect with him. I mean, through our work, I mean, there are other anecdotes. Like I spent a lot of time with Imran Khan.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, because he is a Pakistan cricketer, and one of the that's later on, of course.
We didn't know that he was a Pakistani cricketer. So was that your first big fan moment, Imran Khan, or which one was your big fan moment? And then you come to Imran Khan.
No, there have been a whole bunch of big fan
moments. The first one.
I think the big fan moment was before all of this. I remember there was a cricket match in Jamshedpur, and we as young cricketers who were playing for the state are made to be ball boys, right? And to sort of be around.
Included in the 25 extra. So we.
Sorry. Anyway.
Sorry. So you were talking about being made to walk, etc.
Yeah. So Pakistan was playing India there, and the fanboy moment was that there was Javed Miandad and Imran Khan, and I was like quite amazed, like when they were coming out of the dressing room, right? So Javed Miandad is this sort of jumpy, very squeaky sounding character, right? Not very impressive, but you always know him as a great cricketer. And then he was saying something to Imran. Imran just brushed him off with his sort of deep baton, Javed abhi rehne do, and kind of reread the prima donna of cricket. And I would just realize how personality is sort of work. And obviously they are heroes to me as a young cricketer. And I remember the dissonance of my sort of vision of them, right? Both are legends equal to me, but you go in front of them. One is almost like this street fighter fellow, right? Javed Miandad. And here's this Imran Khan, who's like this completely regal, imposing personality with a deep voice.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, one of my first fanboy moments.
Yeah. So then talk about Imran Khan, and you said you worked extensively.
The other interesting fanboy moment is when I met Sachin for the first time, and so I hadn't known how he sounds, right? Now all of us know, right? So we were, Harsha and a few of us, we were meeting him for something many years back. And obviously there is this huge aura. So we were waiting for him to come and meet him. So already he's a legend and a star, right? So he comes in with his mark or whatever. I think it was Taj. And so he walks out, flashes going, fans going mad. So complete superstar atmosphere, right? And then he steps out and meets Harsha and says, Harsha. So it's like this whole thing of superstar melted in front of me as this personality. I mean, it's the voice plays such a big part in sort of, building out people, and he's the meekest of voices that way. And I just remember that as this, breaking of, sort of glass shattering in my head. Ye kaun hai? But of course, I mean, he's a legend and more. But
so talking of cricketers and speaking of the fact that you dealt and you worked and you spent a lot of time with a whole lot of them, what were their interpersonal like? Like you said, Imran Khan like kind of swatted away Javed Miandad like a fly. What are some of the other interpersonals that you saw that you found surprising or that you found interesting among various people?
So I think, one of the things that I found very interesting and fascinating about a lot of these sports people and cricketers per se is that, when they see these people become megalomaniacs or arrogant or whatever they become, it's actually, I think it's just such a difficult journey they go through. They're becoming great from nobodies, right? And suddenly this whole world of fandom evolves around them. And I think it just is the most difficult job in the world to keep your head in that situation. I mean, if you imagine a world of 5 of us around you or me, and if somebody keeps saying to me, I'm great and I'm the God's gift to mankind, and that keeps getting hammered in my head pretty much 24/7. In a couple of days, I start believing it and I start behaving like that. So I think for these people to deal with all of that, and we don't in India don't have much finishing school or any sort of some sort of formalized education or telling them what to do, what not to do. They pretty much learn all this on the fly, and suddenly they've gone from being reasonably nobodies potentially to absolute superstars with money thrown at them all around the park and fame and you have to learn to deal with it as well as run your life and your career and make the most of it. I think, and I've seen this from very, very close with a lot of sports people, including the early days of the guys our age, which is the sort of Sachin, Dravid, all of these people. I think education does play a big part in it because I think the guys from the south, cricketers also others they end up being potentially engineers and then do other things. So I think there's a little bit more grounding that they have, and it shows, right? I mean, you also realize that most of these players from the south, be it cricket, or badminton, anything else, are a little bit more grounded, a little bit more sensible in their actions and everything else. So I think that's probably one of the very interesting sort of thing we saw from very close.
So
Actually.
so tell me, when you are surrounded by these hordes of people who are telling you every day that you're the best, who actually keeps them grounded? Is it people like celebrity managers? Is it like sports management people, family members who based on all the interaction that you've done,
Yeah.
what keeps
Also,
them grounded, or who keeps them grounded? Who tells them, no boss, you're not the greatest, you do
yeah.
need to work? And because there's a life lesson in
So
this
I mean,
for all of us. It's a
yeah,
life lesson in this for all of us. I mean, as and when there's
yeah.
somebody who acquires a little bit of success, they're surrounded by people who saying, "Aap to bahut achhe ho, yes sir, 3 bags full, sir." So who helps to keep these stars grounded?
So I think that's, I guess, potentially the challenge too, because it's like each to his own, each to her own, right? Because there is no structure as such, right? So if you have, it's like I've heard, and sometimes Dhoni says that he speaks to his mom every day as a habit. So apparently that reminds him in a sense of that's often enough. I think mothers, if you have a good relationship with them, are the people who will keep you grounded somehow. Or there would be somebody in your system, be it a friend, be it somebody in the family who is your sounding board, who you trust and kind of know that he or she will be the mirror in front of me in that sense. Managers sometimes do that, but again, in India, this whole sports management and celebrity management has never really taken off properly because IMG, being one of the sort of world leaders in that, was not able to put that together as a big sort of piece in India, purely because our sort of immature or amateurish kind of structure. Because it's like if I am somebody being managed by somebody and I know you, Sonu, I will say, वो बोलेगा कि मेरा कुछ है इसको promote कर दो. I will say, yeah, okay, and I'll go ahead and do it as opposed to routing it through the system. And it's so much relationship and a word based our system, and it's not that much around paperwork and structure. So I think managed Jadeja and Kumble early days, I think, and Leander Pace, I think, a little bit. But it never really sort of got to any scale because there was always confusion about it. There was one story I remember where Sachin's um, contract, he was managed by a person called Mark McCormack. No, sorry, not Mark McCormack. Mark Mascarenes, who ran some cricket and some other things for a bit. And that was, and of course, ING has a pedigree of managing a lot of sporting legends, right? McEnroe, Federer, Tiger Woods, everybody else. So we were pitching to him and his team. So we then figured that he's a big fan of McEnroe. And I mean, the kid used to actually wear a headband and walk around and all that. So we organized a call between him and McEnroe to say, and of course, I'm doing a great job in building legacy around sports people. So not only during their playing days, but beyond their playing days, and working on that legacy, building models of revenue, etc., etc. So I think we organized just to kind of excite him and sort of say that we manage this guy who happens to be our hero and all of that kind of stuff. We didn't win the contract eventually, but I think we managed to make sure the fees of the agency was a little bit more reduced than what they used to get.
Yeah. And then you said that, after that you joined 10 Sports, which you said was set up by the person who started cricket in Sharjah. So just tell us a little, because, I think most of us who've
so that was
cricket have seen those fantastic matches at Sharjah. So how did they start, and what prompted him to set up a whole new channel?
So that was also a very interesting, a bit of a audacious step as well from our part. So essentially, 10 Sports was a initiative by a person called Chris McDonald, who is the person who started ESPN Star Sports in India, who actually brought them into the country. And that was the only sports channel in the country for a long time. So he, in fact, himself broke out and decided to start a sports channel, saying with a sheer logic that in this large country with this kind of population and viewer base cannot be served by only one sports channel, which is totally true. But the thing is, he got himself backed by Abdul Rahman Bukhatir, who is the person who is the main man behind Sharjah cricket. So in a way, we would talk internally that all this masala T20 cricket actually originates in Sharjah in some sense, because that is where all the mixing of sports and glamour happened many moons back, right, at some point. And so interestingly, so the audaciousness was that to say that you want to give ESPN Star run for their money by with some sort of entrepreneurship money, essentially. I mean, to take a big corporate on with a bit of a dream and a broad logic. But of course, we had 20 years of Sharjah cricket archives that became our body. And interestingly, when we joined, so some of my friends in college and all were saying that, why are you going to Dubai? It's a bit of a, Dubai still had a bit of a shrouded, bit of a negative connotations then, I think. So he said, if you go to Dubai, you can never go to the US after that. I was like, why? But anyway, but he took us to, so Chris took us to this media city place where the office is going to be. And it was stark landscape of sand. And he said, here we'll have a 10 Sports office. I was like, right. I mean, these things happen, these things don't happen. But as it so happened that it did happen, and Media City today is one of the bigger setups in Dubai, with all the sort of regional headquarters of most of the media big houses there. And till date, the 10 Sports building is the only building that's not owned by the government, and it's owned by the private entity, which is Abdul Rahman Bukhatir. So I think what he personally thought was, channel banega nahi pata nahi, but I'm making a building. He's a real estate guy as well, so I at least have an office too. But as it turned out that it was a success pretty quickly, and we sold it onward to Z in about 7-8 years time, and later on Z sold it further forward to Sony at a massive premium, actually 3-4 times premium from the value we sold it to Z at. So in fact, I was talking to Chris some time back saying, you sold off too early, you could have made more money. But that's okay. I mean, these are stories that keep going on.
Yeah. So
and one of the big stories there was the India-Pakistan tour. I think that would have been one of the highlights. And I think hanging around ex-cricketers in the commentary box is potentially one of the most enjoyable parts of this whole journey or job profile, because you're working with an absolute legends of the game and building a strategy for commentary, what to say next, and what would engage the viewers and whatever else. And them themselves are such learned guys, and so much to learn from them. So one of my anecdotes is I had Ian Chappell, who we work with a lot. He's a big sports fan. So, and I was reasonably fit, playing multiple sports. We had a game of tennis one morning, and this is when he was 60, I think, and I was whatever mid-30s, and he hammered me 6-0, 6-1. So I was like, my sort of half ego of being a fit person can play decent sport was completely shattered that day, saying, and that's when he realized how big these Aussies are with their sport and how seriously they take it. And he was unflinching. He was like, I can kill this guy, I will. And that was quite interesting as well.
But Chandru, tell me.
I mean, with Imran.
Sorry. No, carry on. Then I'll ask a question.
No, so Imran thing was a very interesting one as well. When 2004, India goes to Pakistan, I think after a gap of 15 years, and over 30 years, I think is the only time or second time India has gone to Pakistan. So it's a big thing. And it was a very good thing for the network as well, where you could commercialize and monetize and all that. So that's the first time Imran came on television, and he had actually no clue. So the biggest thing a lot of these cricket legends or sports legends have is to not have a broad knowledge of how to engage with the audience as a commentator. So they end up going for their personal stories, or they end up not talking in context or not answering the question and all of those things. So Imran anyway was Imran, but he's a smart, very, very smart and sort of well-spoken guy, of course. So we had him be the guest in our studio with Sidhu for the first time.
That must have been interesting.
And Sidhu, when he starts, as we know, does not stop. So he was like, "Ye kisko liya hai tum log?" And I also remember him really chasing going. So Inzamam was the captain of the Pakistan team, and Inzamam has been handpicked by him as a guy of the street and made into a cricket legend. So he was making some sort of silly mistakes as a captain. So Imran just took off on him. What an idiot! How can he make decisions like this? Like he went on and on about him. He's like talking to a child he's helped grow up, right? The guy happens to be the captain of Pakistan, but doesn't matter to him. So after a few days, I think he approached Ramiz Raja, who's another commentator and also the PCB chairman. And Ramiz, sort of Inzi says to Ramiz that Ramiz bhai, थोड़ी इमी भाई का बोलो ना, सब लोग बोल रहे हैं मुझे बहुत गालियां दे रहे हैं वो टीवी में. So थोड़ा सा कम गालियां दे मुझे, because he doesn't have the balls to go and say anything to Imran at all.
Yeah.
So Ramiz came and said कि ऐसे कह रहा था Inzi. So then of course it doesn't matter to him. He went on and on. This entire series he went on and on about what are the stupid things Imran is doing on the cricket field. So that was very exciting. And he's such an amazing personality. In fact, he told us once in one of those various sessions that like the only reason I'm alive is Musharraf can't afford to kill me. I'm sort of way too popular in this country. Yeah. Because he was setting up his party and all that kind of stuff then, right? And people tend to quell these things in various shapes and forms, especially in places like Pakistan and other places. So yeah, interesting. But yeah, I mean, the other thing is just the whole cultural journey there is very, very interesting. I've been there about 10 times. And I've been asked by the US immigrants, what have you been doing in Pakistan? Sport. But if it's a sport in US, everything is maaf after that.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, you've dealt with cricketers and other sports stars when they were playing and they were like big stars. Once they stop playing and some of them who become commentators, do you see a change in them? Do they have, and do they require training? Does the network have to sit down and tell them how to speak? Do they change in attitude? Do they become more humble? What? Just tell us about the transformation of these stars.
So that's a very interesting question, and the solution to that also is very sort of interesting, because it's a new learning. So a lot of them deal with very differently, and it really is almost like taking a new exam, and it depends on how much flair you have or how much gumption you have to learn new things. So we've had to, early days tell Sunil Gavaskar, for example, to say that, so in cricket, when somebody plays a shot, it is actually pretty simple for him, pretty obvious for him. So, but he would not talk about the nuances because it's not that difficult for him himself. But we have to say to him, listen, you have to kind of still build it up and explain to people how this is, no gap between bat and pad or whatever else, and explain the nuances. Even if they come very easy and they're obvious to you, you have to keep explaining that. The other important thing is to keep adding to pictures. We always do workshops with people.
Yeah. And there is,
because you have to add to visual. A lot of them actually came from radio. The interesting anecdote there. Because in radio, some of these non-cricketers, in radio, you can pretty much keep the excitement going and say anything. So somebody has gone ahead and played something, you can say backward mein khela. Kisne dekha ye? So sometimes you have to say to people, listen, people are watching this, so you can't fib very obviously. And you have to add to the pictures. You can't just say, देखिए उसने ball खेल दिया. वो तो सबने देखा. उसके बाद क्या बता रहे हो? So you have to keep adding to the visuals and keep adding anecdotes and whatever else. And I think diligence, like many other things, plays a very, very big part. So you have to take notes and kind of, add your comments to it, know where you need to say it. A lot of the cricketers actually refuse to learn. They want to go with their flair and their persona. I mean, till date, actually, Kapil Dev doesn't know much about even the names of the young cricketers. He understands, he is the legend of cricket, and he goes on about it. He knows how to wing it, more or less, basically. But he's a legend, and he gets by. But as younger and younger cricketers come in, they are sort of harder working. So it's a lot of hard work doing all of this, actually. And it's very interesting how different people take to it. Some people find a new part of the personality, and like Sehwag has, right? I mean, he was always a tongue-in-cheek guy, but he has evolved himself tremendously in the cricketing world, in the post-retirement world, essentially. So yeah, I mean, then there are these people like some. No, go on.
so folklore has it, or one has heard that after Ravi Shastri retired from cricket, he used to actually spend hours watching old matches, commentating, so that he could become a better television commentator. Is that true? Did he?
Well, I mean, he used to work hard at it early days, but then he also got good at it very quickly, and I think then sort of stayed at that level. As he kept saying the same phrases for a long time, but they end up becoming iconic with time. So all that is also there. But his reading of the game is tremendous.
Yeah, yeah.
I know he has this emphatic, articulate voice, right? So that helped him a lot. The other problem is a lot of the cricketers aren't very comfortable in English, but now of course multiple languages have come out, and there are 8-10 languages being addressed, and
so that helps. So tell me
the
another.
whole pie has become far broader.
So there's something that I've always wanted to ask somebody who knows, and so I'm asking you that when these commentators are in the commentary box, are they always on in the stadium, or do they do remote commentary?
No, so what used to happen is that there has been we've always had commentary in the stadium, because you can actually catch the atmosphere better and kind of comment on the whole thing a little bit more in a more involved manner. Of late, so it's often a function of that and then budgeting and all of that. So, and of course today technology. So you can bring in a lot more camera feeds to the commentary which is done remotely. So today a lot of, let's say, Star Sports IPL commentary, apart from the primary feed, is being done remotely out of a studio in front of TV screens, and that happens. So if the project or the series is large, so there's this one fantastic story we have of, I will not take his name, but we were doing hockey, and it happens that some hockey from around the world is happening at around midnight. So first half has ended, second half is about to start. So our technicians, they kind of switch off the mics, and just about when the second half is about to start, they switch it on. So when he switches it on, we say, okay, XYZ, Q, start commentary. we hear snoring sounds. So we quickly pull down the audio and we go and wake him and say, "What the hell are you doing?" Bloody well, wake up and start doing commentary. Oh no, okay, fine. So, um,
Yeah.
and then I mean there are interesting stories. So in the control room, so ad breaks are taken from what's called the master control room. So they are worth crores and crores, right? So there is obviously a lot of pressure. I mean, that's one of our biggest pressures to face, right? Because big sponsors are paying big money, and then they want visibility, and then they will say, of course, uska shot dikha, uska shot dikha. That's the reason why you see so many shots of these, non-exciting people sitting and clapping like this on a cricket field, because that's almost mandate now. But yeah, so these ad breaks need to come in, especially. So then, sometimes these technicians don't know when the ad breaks have to be taken. Early days again, and then suppose there's a no ball in the last ball, and it's meant even over, and then a 40-second ad break starts. But then there's an extra ball being bowled, but that guy will play the ad break and will miss a ball, and then of course all hell will break loose, and the board will call up. There's this other interesting story of Dean Jones, who passed away recently, right? He, he was banned from cricket commentary for about 3-4 years I mean, not banned, but banished, so to say. So we had, in one of the comedy tours where we were producing it and I was there in the panel. So these guys, they have what they call lip mic, which is the mic is stuck to the lip and you kind of speak. So if you keep it away, you don't hear most of it. So having said that, these guys, Aussies are, sort of cavalier fellows by and large. So these guys will banter a lot. So Australia is playing South Africa. And there's a certain guy called Hashim Amla with a big beard. And in banter, behind closers, we call him terrorist. So this guy, I say, and we've told them a lot of times. So what happens in India, we go to commercial break. Rest of the world doesn't take commercial break. The model is not that. So actually, they keep seeing some footage or the other, like a scoreboard or whatever else. And we said to them, listen, you guys are live in other parts of the world, so please be careful of what you say. We said that as 100 times to them. But Dean Jones, being Dean Jones, so he finished the score and without just had the lip mic here, he said, "I know the terrorist, he's playing well or whatever. And that was heard by the South Africa Cricket Board president. And he was like, our CEO got a call, right after, saying, "Who's on commentary? I want that person out of there right now." So then, pandemonium erupts. Who is it? How? Immediately, Dino was sent home, and he didn't do commentary for 3-4 years after that.
Yeah. So, I mean, he didn't mean it
But
maliciously, did he?
no, never maliciously. Just banter.
Just banter.
But essentially, banter is so part of life, and these guys will not stop at anything almost. I mean, again, being casual, right? So all you have to do is keep it away and then talk, but then they will not sometime. And you just sort of taking it easy and not being careful kind of stuff.
So what is amazing is that banter, which is also heard by people, is not allowed to be offensive. But sledging, which now because of stump mics, you can hear, is part of the game. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? Because sledging also can get very, very offensive.
Yeah. So that's also evolving, right? So when we've done cricket on any other sport, we've heard sledging forever because the stump mics are controlled by us and we are hearing very, very audibly. In fact, we were then instructed by the ICC to reduce the levels of that audio so that it doesn't go out to the people. But then as the demands of broadcast continues and people need to get deeper and deeper into the game, it's like, why shouldn't sledging be heard? So then slowly that became more and more of our open story. Be able to hear what the players are saying among themselves. So therefore, they will also sledge very differently after that, right? Because they don't want to be seen and heard in their original avatar. I mean, if you hear sledging of the 80s and 90s, that was diabolical. To now sledging is a little bit more different, and they will still do it, but obviously it's like 30% of tone or 50% tone down at least, right?
So it's genteel sledging, if
Yeah.
there could be such.
It's like the stories you can tell people. And a lot of stories you can't tell people.
Yeah. Achha, so now, Chandru, enough of speaking about cricketers. Now, I want to speak about the fact that at the ripe old age of 34, you decided to give all this up and become an entrepreneur yourself, and which then
Yeah.
got you to be Emmy nominated. So, tell us what did you start doing, and then take us through how the remix happened in Vietnam.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think just to connect the dots from grandfather to me, I think there is a certain desire and tendency to want to, I think, pursue a path of, see, the unknown, or the untreaded path, so to say, I think. And that I've noticed in hindsight, I think, in my career, that whenever something got steady and, steady state can grow, I would get bored and want to do something else. So IMG was a one-room office in Delhi, and we made that into, in about a few years' time, the biggest office outside of the US, anywhere in the world, and did a lot and all of that. But again, it was about getting at him to scale and this and that, and then 10 sports happened, this complete audacious sort of thought out of the blue, and somehow I got drawn to it, and I said, let's do it. And thankfully it happened. So, and similarly, I think about 10, 12 years into my career, this whole bug of, I was bored of doing cricket and things, again, it became sort of mundane-ish, like any job potentially does. And my friends were telling me, what is wrong with you? You travel the world watching cricket and you love cricket and other sport, and you're saying you're bored of that. So anyway, that was that. And so it wasn't a tremendously thought through sort of a plan, but you end up doing more of what you know, right? I mean, that's what you do as an entrepreneur by and large. Maybe you put a bit more thought behind it than we did at that point of time. But yeah, we came back to India. So first, I think we were quite sort of sure that 10 sports was Dubai. And I think between my wife, Payal, and me, we didn't enjoy Dubai that much. Although, it's a good life, capital of Kerala, all those things. But um, we thought, we want to. So we were both thankfully interested in both in the media, both interested in doing more things than just like a sport, and just open up and do a variety of things if possible. And that really is the reason we wanted to do our own production house and do our own content piece. Um, and then having seen IP being built around us in IMG and in, let's say, 10 sports, we thought we could try and build some IP. So along with doing creative services of what we know as live. So one part was live sport production. So we've been very excited and fortunate about being associated with various sports, right? So we did another launch of a kabaddi thing when we started. It was not the kabaddi that's very popular, but the other kind. It's called the circle kabaddi, which is Punjab based. It was a plan made by somebody along with the Punjab government and all of that, and it kind of fell apart. But I still think it was a good idea because Punjabi diaspora, all of that was in play, and it is really, really popular. So could have been done better, etc. Recently, we've done very interestingly what's called like a Kerala, the snake boat racing in Kerala. So we work with the Kerala government and try to build a league around that. And that was fascinating because it's already got such a big fan following. It's a cultural, iconic thing. And they want to build that out as a 3-4 month lean period thing. I mean, when we went down to any of those, weekends, more than 100,000 people are floating around there anyway. Then it's a question of, galvanizing that sort of excitement and fan base. Um, and I mean, as we got deeper into it, it's like it's fascinating to see what happens in those boat races. Like more than 100% people in one boat. There are 10 boats, so more than 1,000 people, athletes involved in that. So, and of course, the backdrop is spectacular. So it can be built into a tourism piece. So all those things were in play, and that's potentially the excitement of sport and culture, right? To kind of see if we can marry the two, and sports then becomes popular culture and broadcastable, monetizable sort of IPs. And that happened. Of course, pandemic happened to sort of kill that for one season, but that's likely to happen again. Um,
Before that, you also said that you spent 3 years in Afghanistan, which must have been
yes.
on and off. I mean, that must have been again terrifying or fascinating, exciting. What?
So it was. I mean, obviously, it's not the safest place in the world to go to. All of us know that. but they were launching the Afghan Premier League football. And broadly, the impact of that league was actually higher than the impact of IPL in India. That's how popular that was there. And we were pulled into it by Chris McDonald, who's the founder of 10 Sports, who then started doing different things. And he said, "We are doing this. Would you guys like to come?" I guess my risk appetite is pretty high, so it's like, yeah, I'm going to come. So went there 3 years, and it actually was one of my favorite projects till yet because of the sheer impact it had on the populace, as well as even in the workplace. So many young Afghanis interested and hungry to learn more. So we also did a lot of training with the local partners there, and kind of worked with. We had to work locally because the local languages are there, right? And we have no knowledge and control over that. So bringing the best of India and international knowledge and crews and marrying them to local people. And that was fascinating. They used to have a separate stand for girls because still, you don't know how the guys will react and all that. And I did that for 3 years, spent almost 2-3 months every time. And then eventually got too dangerous. He actually told us we did it for 4 years. And then actually that was the time when the Indian consulate got bombed as well. And they would support us a lot, and they would really kind of back us too. We stayed in private guest houses. We were given sort of security guards, and movements were pretty restricted. But it was a lot of fun still. I mean, yeah, you can see the ravages of war for sure. In fact, I've got some pictures I can show you all later. Is that, I just sometimes got fascinated to see what it takes for a bunch of people to live together, right? The kind of armed, sort of protection. And if you go to for example, the US consulate or whatever there's like 6 levels of screening, and big fat 8 walls, and then those whatever those trenches for protection. It's like it takes all of this for people to have some harmony between them, if at all.
Yeah.
So it was interesting, and there's so much that is destroyed there. It's a very, very beautiful landscape, but it was very compelling actually. But yeah, coming back to music, so music is, it's actually one of Payal's favorite topic as well. So we kept thinking about, when we're doing variety of things, how do we create something that is a differentiator on existing music sort of concepts. And so what we thought is that most shows are about singing like the best, be it the Idol or the Voice or whatever else. So you're like, how do we actually take it to the next level and make it more new age? So our concept is about actually recreating, reimagining music, and letting the youngsters, along with a music producer, give it a new spin. So that was, we thought, was slightly more challenging, interesting, new avatar. And we created a sort of a backdrop of dancers and performers, as well as visual sort of imagery that makes it a very compelling visual package, almost like a video, music video, so to say. So that is what it was. And it got picked up in Cannes, in a massive media market, as the 25 sort of top new formats in the world. And so that helped start that in Vietnam. Somebody in Vietnam started that. Then in China, it happened. In Indonesia, it's happened for 3 years. It happened in India with Amazon Prime Video for one season. It's shortly happening in a few other countries. So the version we did for Amazon is the one that got nominated for the Emmy Awards. And yeah, we were there. I think it's pretty much the only Indian IP that has ever gotten that far. Not even an Asian IP has got to the Emmy Awards. It was good fun to be there and sort of, meet the best creative minds of the world, so to say.
Yeah. So who all did you meet at the Emmys? Tell us some star stories.
No, I mean, nothing to that. I mean, we met the makers of Game of Thrones. So that was quite fascinating because they were there and they were getting some award. Um, we ended up meeting a whole bunch of Indian drama also got selected in that Emmy. So I think I forget the name now, but the series that had Nawazuddin and a few others actually got shortlisted in the Emmy. So there was an army of Indian sort of celebrities there, Karan Johar, Variety, and all of those. So not that we want to really mingle with them, but they were there too. Um, Thing is, what the beauty is, the whole lot of very interesting and worthwhile work gets showcased there. And you meet professionals or even youngsters, or a very old producer who's done some really great work from all around the world. And so those are the pieces that become very interesting, having conversations with them. And how then I feel that, India, they're all actually dying for Indian stories. The world is. I think we have to repackage our stories and tell them to the world properly. Our current export is Bollywood, which has its own sort of excitement and limitations. In the series world, where a little bit more experiments are happening, we have the all these dramas and suspense thrillers and underbelly of India being exposed. But obviously, there is more to Indian life than just that, and I think it'll slowly need to tell more stories around those, and that's what our attempt is really. I mean, if you were to kind of signpost why we started, it is coming together now, right? I mean, just last week we launched this whole sort of online cricket tutorials with Sehwag and a whole lot of other cricketers, saying, can the knowledge of cricket learning, mental, physical, technical, be disseminated to a whole universe of people who don't have access to them otherwise? So there is Lara and there is Chris Gale and there is AB de Villiers, all the best of the best, Brett Lee and all those. And what actually I really enjoyed, given my sporting inclinations, is the knowledge and the little nuances they put in there to actually help these guys. Suppose somebody in far out, BCD town is seeing it and is getting inspired and actually learning from it. I mean, that's what it needs to do, right, at some level. So that was very interesting. We are doing stuff for Netflix, Amazon, to the world. We are working on some biopic films. We are working on a series documentary for somebody else. So, as you can see that we are sort of cutting across genres and formats. And that is the excitement of it all, right? I mean, I'm sort of working with one startup company that's trying to virtualize the devotional world. That's very
Virtual
fascinating too.
emotional world.
Yeah.
Really? How?
So, how older people sort of like to listen to their sort of, songs of devotion or follow a certain favorite image of a god or whatever. And temple darshans, all those, that element, it's a very big part of Indianness, right? Can you actually provide that digitally, or what parts of that can you? And I thought that's pretty fascinating, right? And more importantly, as I keep saying to those guys, that we need to find ways to figure out how the youngsters are innovating. Otherwise, we'll become fossilized pretty soon, which we are getting anyway. But that's a way to kind of understand how young guys are thinking, and it's very fascinating. So, yeah, I mean, it's sort of journey of exploration really that has sort of
Yeah.
gotten us to where we are more or less today, wherever that is.
Yeah. So, when you're talking about the world wanting to see more Indian stories,
Hmm.
I think we have a great example in South Korea. I
Yes.
think the world over, these K series and the Korean serials have just become so big. So there is
Yes.
an audience that wants to see good stories or from other countries, and language today is really no barrier. Subtitling is taking care of everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we do need more Indian stories. But before I end, I think there's some question around. If you could re explain what got you the Emmy nomination, what exactly did you do to win, to get nominated? What was that program?
No, so the remix version in India on Amazon Prime Video is the one that was nominated for the Emmys.
So, it's a program.
It's a program. It's a reality sort of music talent hunt
Yeah.
that's available on Amazon Prime Video, among a few other shows that we've also done.
Yeah.
So that is the one that got us the nomination for the Emmys.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So we are out of time. but it's really been fascinating to listen to you. And more power to you, and keep on doing more good programming.
Thank you.
And keep winning more Emmys, and keep coming back to us with more stories about people.
No, absolutely will. I think more at Jeffries to follow.
More at Jeffries to follow. Okay.